Welcome everybody, nice to be here. I just thought before launching in I'd tell you a little bit about me so that you know why I am doing this. My initial training was in naturopathy and a little bit of counselling. So I started off in 1980, 1981, you know, seeing clients with physical, emotional complaints that they came to a naturopath for rather than a doctor. And pretty soon it became obvious that a lot of the physical stuff had mental and emotional correlations. So I just kept on building with my counselling training, and I've always been very interested in the mind-body connection and what actually happens between the two of them, or what doesn't happen. My bent started from that sort of holistic approach to well-being, basically, and which includes, then extrapolated into including spiritual well-being, well-being in our culture, in our society, in our relationships. And as things went on, I really just became much more enamored with the emotional and the mental side of how we function as human beings. And for the last 10, 12 years in my practice, I've really focused only on the counselling, psychotherapy, and that aspect of it. When I was doing my master's, the thing that fascinated me, and this is where this comes in, this presentation, I really was curious about what is it that makes people thrive and function well despite being in the field, dealing with people who come with lots of problems, lots of, you know, imbalances in one way or another. What makes them thrive and continue to feel enthused about their work and maintain their energy levels despite working with so many distressed people? So the basis of this is the literature search that I did for my master's degree, and looking at what promotes thriving and well functioning in people who had been working in the field as psychologists, therapists and counsellors for over 20 years. So there is actually a literature out there that you can look at that, and that's the basis for this. And so because of my naturopathic background, I'm you know, really focused on preventing rather than treating when something is there. So for those of us who are caring for other people, it's really important to look at the whole preventative aspect rather than waiting until the horse is bolted and we're trying to shut the stable door when it's already too late, in a way. And so as I'm talking, please feel free to interrupt or to ask questions or whatever, you know, like I'm not kind of, I'm not gonna relegate just a Q&A time, so please make this as interactive as you'd like. So as I mentioned, the main thing is prevention, and the self is really something that, you know, you can conceptualize. I'm not going to, you know, elaborate too much on it, but it's really it's that aspect of ourselves that keeps on moving through and developing and changing throughout the course of our life, and that is impacted by you know, what we do, who we interact with, our environment, how we understand who we are in relationship to our environment and others. So I'm just going to look at the self in that sort of broad context rather than just necessarily in our personal well-being. So if we are looking at prevention, what we're doing is looking at continuing to thrive and be able to be the best that we can in relationship to the people that we're dealing with. So I'd mentioned the prevention part, but we're looking also at when we're preventing things, preventing damage to ourselves or wearing down to ourselves in the best ways that we can, we actually end up developing aspects of ourselves. It's kind of inevitable, really. And that's why I met Father Tim, or how it's soon to be, Bishop Tim, because we met through a Ken Wilber group, study group, and so that was the core of the way that I looked at prevention, looking at Wilber's model of integral life practice. So his model looked at, you know, exercising body, mind and spirit in self, culture and nature I've actually added a fifth module, which is ethics, which is really important and which kept being stressed in the literature in terms of prevention and thriving and well-functioning in those of us who are caring for others. So there will sometimes, some of the quotes that I'll be using in here will be from the therapy psychology literature, but I'm sure it can be extrapolated to anybody who's doing caring in any way, caring for others or dealing with people who are distressed. And that includes you know, maybe policemen and women, you know, people who work in emergency services, ambulance, fire people. So, you know, in your own parishes, you know, you'll get all types of people coming to you. And so these principles will apply for all people who come across people who are distressed. Okay. So the overall gist of where I'll be, you know, what I'll be stressing today is in these 5 modules, to try for ourselves to pick 1 or 2 practices in each of those modules and to cross-train them. Do them at the same time. So just focusing on the body and not looking at our emotions, or just focusing on spirit and not dealing with, you know, how we're thinking or our body is going to be imbalanced. And that's generally what leads to non-thriving in people and to compassion fatigue, tiredness, and eventually burnout. So, and yeah, so if we think about it, our self is the only thing that we can bring to our work. Yeah. So if we're stressed, if we're run down, if we're not particularly dealing with whatever is happening in our own life, you know, our own physical life, our own mental and emotional life, our relationships, our communities, that's naturally going to impact the people that we relate to. It's inevitable. And because, you know, what, in terms of the second point here on this slide, this is all we have, the self, and it's not really about what we know. We can know all sorts of things. We can be very theoretically competent. We can really know everything there is to know about our particular field of caring or our spiritual work and what have you. But if we're stressed, if we're not feeling that we're on top of what's going on in our personal lives, how we are comes across to people. I mean, we know now that 60 to 90% of the way we interact with people is non-verbal. It's our body language, our facial expressions, our voice tone. All of that speaks louder than what it is that we're saying. And that's the aim of looking at prevention and being aware of ourselves to the highest degree we can, really. Okay, so really how we are impacts our clients, who we're caring for. So sometimes I will leave the word client in there. I don't know how you would refer to them, parishioners or, you know.
Parishioner, congregant.
Congregants, okay. So, yeah, so maybe those words can be used interchangeably. Now, each of us has to find our own rationale for why we want to do this. And, you know, adopting somebody else's rationale is not going to work. So the rationale that I've been using for a long time, just because it's my own personality, my way of dealing with life and the world, my own particular Enneagram type, whichever lens you want to look at it through, I really look at, am I actually doing what I'm helping other people to do? You know, because if we don't walk the walk, that comes unstuck. You know, that again is part of, we shout out louder than anything else if we're not, you know, our behaviours don't match our words. And so by trying to model that in my own life, modelling authenticity and integrity, it naturally pushes me to develop my own capacities. It has to, because I keep asking questions about, am I doing what I'm saying to others? This actually came up to me very clearly in, you know, I think it was actually 5 or so years that I've been practicing as a naturopath counsellor, and found myself with a particular client, you know, really when we were dealing with what it was that they were concerned with, thinking to myself, what I'm saying sounds really useful to me. Why am I not doing this for myself, you know? And it was like that was the beginning of my journey of really going, okay, I have to walk the walk. So by doing this, by really paying attention and practicing for myself what it is that we're doing and practicing the preventative aspects of healthcare, it actually does tend to highlight shadow aspects. We're going to look at shadow, further on. It's the fourth of the 5 modules. And this is, the parts that we're just unconscious about. I mean, research has shown, therapy literature, counseling literature shows that really the bulk of what we do is unconscious. Yeah? And it's not very flattering for us. There have been some statistics that say maybe 3 to 10% of what we do is conscious, the rest is unconscious. Those stats can be questioned, but really there is so much going on about which we have no idea. And the presenter that, this conference that we're at for the last 2 days, he started off more or less with these maxims, People do not know what they do. We make up stories about what we think we're doing, And really, another way of looking at it is that we're highly emotional beings looking for rational reasons for why we do things. And emotions are just, they're what prompt us to move through life. They're what prompts ourselves. So if our emotions are stressed through whatever is going on in our life, that's going to prompt how we care others. And those others will pick up that stuff non-verbally. It's just inevitable. So prevention, self-care highlights those shadow aspects, develops our ethical awareness inevitably, because our ethics and our understanding of ethics really will continue growing throughout our life if we're paying attention, and it contributes to an appropriate sense of responsibility in life and work. Because a lot of people, and again this is shown in the literature, those who are drawn to caring in any way, do all of us have shadow rescuer aspects in us. We want to do something for others for whatever reason, and we don't really know what it is that those reasons are about. And these shadow aspects keep on tangling us up. They keep on tripping us up, which can then make us feel over-responsible in our life and our work. Okay, so comprehensiveness is what this approach is about.
Vivian,
Those 5 modules.
Can I just throw in on that last point?
Please.
We often have conscious reasons why we believe we're doing rescuing.
Yes.
But there's also unconscious stuff.
Oh, absolutely.
Right?
Yes.
So we all have a good rational account for why we do it.
That's
right?
exactly right. Yeah. So no, thank you for that. I didn't make clear that. Yeah, we all have reasons for for doing what we're doing, and often they're the rational reasons that we have come up with to deal with the emotional impulses that we have that are usually coming from those unconscious aspects.
Those are post hoc rationalizations.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. That's a good way of saying it. Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, certainly when I was doing all of this research in the literature, and when through my training in counselling and in naturopathy, and in any of the therapies, self-care is not addressed. The way that it's addressed, it's suggesting that we do our own therapy or our own supervision. And the whole literature shows this is necessary but insufficient, really, for promoting thriving in what we're doing. And Lugos and Friedlander draw on a huge, base of, studies that actually show that, you can go through a lot of your own therapy, you can go through all your supervision and have constant supervision, but it will not necessarily prevent you from having compassion fatigue or from burning out. So that's important to know. And really, again, the literature showed that those who are proactive in their own self-care, taking into account all of these aspects, I mean, they're just broad brushstrokes, but really self-awareness and self-monitoring was primary. And what that entails is really checking out with those closest to us how we're coming across, because often our family, our friends, our partners, the ones who are closest to us can actually, if we're open to it, if we're self-aware, if we're monitoring, they're the best mirrors for us. They'll be saying, you're looking a bit tired, you're looking a bit run down, you're sounding a bit irritable, what's going on? you know, and normally, you know, our reaction is no, we're not. If we're not aware of it, no, what do you mean? That's not me.
I wonder, there seems to me to be a bit of a disconnect here, though.
Yeah.
To say, well, so much of what's driving our approach to these things is these shadow aspects, the things that are hidden from ourselves.
Yes.
And then at the same time saying that somehow self-awareness is that first step. I mean,
Yes.
how much are we just missing? You know, not just in terms of our own awareness of ourselves,
Yeah.
but how much are we not broadcasting? Because I think that,
Yeah.
that at least from my own experience, I worry about this, that when I'm struggling, when I'm having, you know, compassion fatigue,
Yeah.
you know, the first thing that happens
Yeah.
is I shield any symptomology of that from anybody around
Absolutely.
me. I want to make sure that no one notices that.
Yes, absolutely.
And so I worry about this,
yeah.
you know, of thinking of self-awareness and self-monitoring
Yes.
sort of too blithely.
Yeah.
I think we have to sort of acknowledge how difficult a task that is.
And absolutely, it is, and that's why we need all of these resources from friends, family, our community, our spiritual directors, our supervisors, you know, whatever we can draw on. We need other people, basically, to help us with that, because the literature really showed with psychologists and psychotherapists who actually act out, you know, sexually or in some way with their clients, usually it's because they have been struggling. You know, there's something going on in their own relationships, something going on in their own lives and communities that they're struggling with, in denial about, they're trying to cope, you know, or pretend that they cope, or they're wanting to cope but not realizing that they're not coping. And then, of course, you know, people who are coming to them for help will have certain projections onto them and expectations, and they want to look good, they want to look capable. And it's very enticing and very, what's the word? Seductive, yeah. To feel that someone puts us on a pedestal. They think we have the answers. They think we know how to help them. And
I'll just add something else
yeah,
to what you said there. You know, you talked about the blocking. You can never hide from other people the fact that you are not the way you were when you were functioning well. Okay?
yeah,
So you will change.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes again, the seductive self-illusion that I am managing my projection, the projection of myself out into the world, is a bit illusory. And you've got people, you're putting people in the situation of saying, well, I know he's different, and this is all happening subconsciously. I know he's different. I also know he doesn't want me to think he's different,
Right.
so I can't talk to him about this difference.
Yeah.
So, and that's where all the shadow stuff comes in. Yeah.
So, you know, you're in a very complex system,
Yeah.
and you can, you know, the cliche is you can never stop communicating.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Thank you.
I can't remember who it is who said this, but it's a well-known quote, and I first heard Deepak Chopra quoting it, but it's not him, who said, "Who you are speaks so loudly, I can't hear what you're saying."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, you know, it's like it just, you know, if we're like this and we're going, look, it's really important to really be relaxed. Right. Okay.
Relaxed.
Exactly.
What's that phrase from Cityside you quoted last night, Andrew?
What's that?
The big screaming head.
Oh, screaming head, yeah.
But there's so much going on
Yes.
behind there.
Yeah,
that
exactly.
The words get drowned out.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's the thing about empathy to self. You know, if we don't have empathy to self, and one of the other slides talks about really that John Norcross, who is a well-known researcher in the psychotherapeutic field, talks about just up front, expect that you will get fatigue. Expect that. Do not, you know, somehow or other belabor under the illusion that there's something different about you.
Right.
Yeah? And that's the empathy to self. Acknowledge when we are tired or we are stressed or we are objectifying our congregants or, you know, the people we're caring for, you know, oh God, another one who is doubting their faith. Terrific, you know.
Oh, we never do
Exactly, that sort of stuff. So, and that's why our spouses, our peers, etc., are so important, as well as our mentors and supervisors who are ahead of us on the track, or spiritual, what are they called?
Spiritual directors? Or?
Directors, yes, spiritual directors. So, and of course, I mean, the other things that I've got here, work-life boundaries, that's just in the literature everywhere. Having vacations, diversifying work, was it really interesting that came up, that people who are just not focusing on their caring or their therapy or whatever it is that they're doing, but they have interests that are really in other fields. You know, totally, like particularly they were saying, you know, learning something new the whole time. So if you're trying to, you know, become a better carer, if you're at the same time challenging yourself, at the moment I started to challenge myself to learn the ukulele, okay, and you really remember how it is to be a beginner again, and how really not to know how to do something, and how frustrating it is that you can't get the basics right, and that really helps with the empathy towards somebody else, empathy towards ourselves, and to really show that we're not that together, because we can start feeling that we've got it really together, we really understand what caring is all about and what therapy is all about, or what it is that we're doing, being, you know, a spiritual guide for others is all about, and it's a false idea of who we are. We don't know a lot about a lot of things.
I think a lot of this sounds like it's letting go of the need to be a special snowflake.
Yes.
You know, and that, I know,
Yes.
just speaking from my own experience, that's really hard.
Absolutely.
I mean, letting go of my special snowflakeness
Yes.
is, I mean, a constant battle. I always want to go,
Absolutely.
oh, well, yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
But, you know, for me, you know, and just, you know, always making exceptions for
Sure,
ourselves, I think
absolutely.
is something that's a
Yes.
very, very difficult task to overcome.
Epidemic.
Sure.
So,
Yeah.
Endemic and epidemic.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Our ego is always, I mean, it's necessary to have a healthy ego, but what is healthy in which context? Okay, so that'll do for that one. So, just two quotes. What is thriving and well functioning? So, it's the enduring quality in one's professional functioning over time in the face of professional and personal stressors. And it's also the individual's effectiveness in preventing and coping with stress. It requires that the individual be able to define it as changeable or not, and to use coping mechanisms appropriate to the situation. So that sort of shows a little bit more about the complexity of what it means to actually, or how they identified those therapists. This is where the literature, you know, I've drawn these quotes from the literature, what identified them as being thriving and well functioning. And so the basis for, you know, two main papers that are in the reference are these. One of them was the heads of departments saying, well, this particular person is thriving and well functioning, and so, you know, they were nominating the people who were going to be interviewed for these research papers. And then the second paper was people who had been in the field a long time, pointing to those who they had found particularly effective and thriving for themselves. So that's the basis of that. So with the body module, which is the first module, we're looking at 4 aspects. Firstly is diet. So this is, you know, from my naturopathic training, basic stuff, 101, looking at our, you know, having lean proteins, complex carbohydrates, monounsaturated fats, and deep sea fish oils. 5 portions of fruit and veg every day, if possible, fresh, and having filtered water. Now, we all know this. Do we do this? You know?
Oh, you're pretty safe with this group to say no.
So, and this, I mean, isn't it St. Paul who said, you know, the good that I would do, that I do not, the evil that I would not, that I do. So we do this in all of these 5 modules. And so it's really, first of all, learning the theory, and then really questioning what's my rationale for doing this or not doing this, as far as I know. So exercise also.
I've got that. I just kind of mix everything out. You know, I've got fatty proteins, a complex relationship, with fruits and vegetables.
Yes.
And
water.
I'm lean on water in general. So I've got it. It's just a little bit of a jigsaw.
Well, that's
Yeah.
what this experiential exercise on the body is going to be about. So that you have a look at your own and, you know, go, okay, where can I tweak it? So with exercise, again, you know, for many years, I spent so much time. You know, it was too early, it was too late, I was too hungry, I was too full, you know, it was too cold, it was too hot. You know, I had thousands of excuses, and I would actually use up, you know, quite a lot of time in the day, because there was a part of me, part of myself going, I know I'd feel better if I exercise, another part, the majority, was going, no, too much, this, that, and the other. So when we can get around that, whatever it was, you know, that whatever it is that may be holding each one of us back, it's like increasing the cardiovascular capacity. That, you know, cardiovascular disease is the #1 killer, you know. So strengthening our physical mass, maintaining suppleness and flexibility in addition, so...
And, you know, the knock-on effects from the cardiovascular stuff
on the brain.
This is a very expensive organ. It takes a lot of fuel, and you know you're increasing your body's ability to deliver fuel to it, to deliver blood. The exercise as a preventing factor for Alzheimer's is now established, pretty well established. So. You know, it's not just body stuff. This will affect your mind as well.
Absolutely, and that's the thing. You know, starting from my basis is body mind. It's one whole. You can't separate it. You know, so so much literature on that now. So the thing is rest. The next aspect. You know, how long are we working? You know, burning the candles at both ends. You know, congregants call and all out. I don't know what your policies are around that. You know,
Well, for most of us, we're
Other
all
life.
bivocational,
Yes,
right? So
exactly.
it's fitting church work in and the stuff that makes the money as well. So.
Absolutely.
The congregants are fine. It's the clergy that's a pain in the ass.
See, that's the other thing, isn't it? That's it. So when we do sleep, what is it? Is it restful sleep? Is it disturbed sleep? Is it, you know, long enough? All of that. And, you know, just physiological rest time. One of my things that I'm constantly challenged on is really having what I call, in my mind, unstructured time. You know, my time feels like it blocks the whole time. I have to be there, do that, write this paper, do this thing, you know. And it's like when I can just have unstructured time, that goes a long way to my rest. Even if it is only, you know, an hour or two that I'm just not going to do anything. That's one of my things that I really love. And medication, watching what we do, whether it's prescribed or recreational meds, you know. So how much alcohol, how we lean on alcohol and drugs if we take, you know, recreational drugs when we're stressed. You know. Taking vitamins, minerals, hormones, and our neurological balance. What actually happens in our brain and body, in the nerves, in the interaction, if our meds are screwing up with our neurology. And how that's going to impact on how we come across and how we are in the world with those we deal with. So we're going to do a little experiential exercise now. So 2, 4, 6, 8. So maybe if you could get together with someone you don't know, I mean, you know, preferably, these two don't work together because they've done this. So, and what I'd like you to do is in pairs, just for this exercise, look at your typical week. And just discuss with your partner these points, like, are you actually doing the 3 meals a day with macronutrients? Are you having at least one healthy snack? Do you take a multivitamin, etc.? I don't have to read it out for you. And really the idea is, to set a small achievable change goal for yourself and, you know, addressing 1 or 2 factors. And then review your goal in a month and note what changes, what doesn't.
Let's start.